Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adventures in Adventuring. When we last left, Fort Kingshard had been, the curse of Fort Kingshard had been lifted, and the mysterious stranger that attacked the group had gotten away, as well as his sister. Gerald, now being the owner of Fort Kingshard, decides that he wants to build it up as a city and a safe refuge. And people come from all around to gather there. Orisa immediately starts work on a tavern. So they build this tavern. It takes about 3 weeks. And she calls the tavern the Fleeing Dragon. And within a few days of the tavern being open, a bard shows up, and his name is Ferdinand. And Ferdinand is well known throughout the land, and he brings in a lot of customers. So one night he's singing a song, and he starts singing, "Oh, my friends, have you heard about my pal Mirf Ermagerd?" And as he says Ermagerd, somebody gets punched. And he keeps singing the song. And every time he says Ermagerd, somebody in the bar gets punched. Sometimes it's an accident, sometimes it's not. But as they're doing so, he says it one time and Orisa gets hit. And as Orisa gets hit, all of a sudden, her memories come back to her. She had a son many, many years ago. Now, dwarves age differently, so she's about 60 years old right now. But she was young when she had this child, and she decided to throw a party afterwards. During the party, she got incredibly drunk, passed out for a whole month, nearly in a coma, and she ended up losing her memory. During this time, her best friend Marion decided that it would be best for the child if she took the child away. So she took the child, and the child's name was Mirf. And she took the child and she fled. Well, these memories come back to Orisa, and she's like, "Oh, I need to find my son." And she knows that Marion used to work on a ship a long time ago, and the best place to find her would probably be Brigatshard. So she talks to the group, and they all get together, and they say, "Okay, well, we'll help you find your son." So they head on their way to Brigatshard to try to find Marion, and Abaddon meets up with them, and he decides to go with them. So, it takes about a week, and they get to Brigatshard, and as they walk into town, there's these 10 thugs that surround them, and they start threatening the group. Well, Gerald steps back into the crowd a little bit. He hides himself, and he casts Dissonant Whispers. And 4 of the bad thugs freak out and start running, and 2 of them drop down to their knees and are going mad, and they're like, "No, what is that?" And 2 others are reacting to their friends freaking out, not knowing what's going on. And the leader and his sidekick attack Abaddon and Orisa, who are at the front of the group. Well, the henchman is a blue dragonkin, and his first attack is that he breathes a bolt of lightning. Well, Orisa and Abaddon see him pull back and can see that he is a dragonkin, and so they both. Orisa shoves her battle axe into the ground in front of her and ducks down behind it, and Abaddon does the same thing with his sword, and they cross, and the lightning bolt hits the sword and the axe and grounds into the ground, and nobody's hurt. So they made their savings throws. Of course, the leader goes to attack. Abaddon stands up and bumps him away, and comes back with a backswing and takes his head right off. Well, the henchman freaks out, turns, and starts to run, and Orisa takes her battle axe and just boom, gets him right in the back, and he dies. So the 2 that are left surrender. They give up. So Orisa and Abaddon tie him up, and and the crowd goes wild, just cheering them, and hooray, these are our heroes. And so Briggitshire, 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 sorry, is a shanty town, and it's built in layers of these shacks that are built one on top of the other. And they go up for hundreds of feet along these two cliffs. It's also got a harbor, and in the harbor there's all these ships. It's just filled with ships, and there's pirates walking around and all sorts of nasty characters. And one person approaches Abaddon and says, "Please come to my tavern and regale my customers with your story." So he goes to the tavern, and drinks are on him, and the room is on him, and it's bringing in all these people. And they get to the tavern, and the waitress just happens to be Marion, one of the waitresses, and she recognizes Orisa, and she goes up to Orisa, "Oh, my friend," and they hug, and she starts telling the story, and she's like, "Your son has grown up to be an excellent sailor, but he's not much of a thinker, and he got in a fight. Somebody said his full name. Somebody said Ermagerd. He knocked out a whole bunch of pirates. Well, the captain, whose name is Captain Arpoon, is the captain of the Salty Chum, and he kidnapped Mirf and took him to the island of Loam. The problem is that nobody knows where the Isle of Loam is." Well, so they start asking around the bar, and there's a bard there that says, I have seen that somewhere. I believe I saw it on a statue in town." So the group goes to this statue, and the statue is of an archer. And written on a plaque is a poem, and it says, "Through the eye and through the sky, the Isle of Loam doth lie." So they think through it, and they follow the arrow at night. They wait until night, and the stars come up, and they follow the arrow, and the arrow points directly to an archer in the sky, and where the arrow of the archer is pointing, they figure is where the island must be from here. So they go and they buy a boat. Now it ends up costing them 60,000 gold, which is a lot, but you've got to understand that Gerald and Sombria and Orisas and Ariante all have their own towns and their own cities and stuff. So they each pool 20,000 of their town's gold to buy this ship, and the ship is fully loaded, and it's got a staff for 6 months. So they set sail for the Isle of Loam. Now, it takes them a couple of days to get there, and sure enough, when they get to the marker, they can see this island looming. Now, the island is it's a nearly circular island with straight up cliffs on all sides, and there are very little bits of beach around the sides. And as they approach, they start getting fired upon, and they look up and they can see cannonball fire from a wall around the top of this island. And they shoot a couple of cannonballs, but the cannonballs don't make it up the cliff. The cliff is up here, and it's shooting the cannonballs down, and they're getting very close to being in range of these cannonballs, but their cannonballs don't make it that high because the arc is wrong. So they decide to get in a dinghy and go towards the island. Well, as they get pretty close to the island, it is at night, and they are sneaking in, and they see it. There are searchlights. They have these lanterns and strong mirrors, and they're trying to shine them down on the water to watch all along this wall. There's about 6 of them, and they're shining them down, and one of the searchlights finds the boat. So immediately this cannon fire starts again. Well, Ariante says, "Forget this, I'm getting out of here." So she goes to dive in the water, and as she does so, everybody says, "Okay, we'll dive in the water too, because these cannonballs are way too close." So she says that before this shot was taken, and they all jump, and I roll 20. So the cannonball hits the boat as they all jump, and she just happened to jump before I rolled that die. And so everybody jumped into the water. The boat was demolished, but there were sharks in the water. One of the sharks gets a hold of her. She has cast water breathing on herself, and Abaddon sinks straight to the bottom. It's only about a 20-foot depth at this point. So he's holding his breath and trying to fight off the sharks, and Orisa helps him up to the shore. And then when she gets to the shore, she casts invisibility on herself and fly. Using her concentration ability, she's able to hold 2 spells at a time. So she's invisible and she's flying. Very complex maneuver. She can't do anything else. So she flies up to the top of the cliffs to take a look. And she can see that there is a prison in the center of this camp, and the camp has about 40 people in it. So she flies back down, and Gerald happens to find a cave, an entrance to a cave that's pretty well hidden. They go into the cave, walk through the corridor a little bit, and they can hear people talking. They come around this corner, and the cave opens up into a large secured harbor area. And somehow the boat can fit between these cliffs, and they see that this boat is the Salty Chum. So there's about 12 guys on it. There's other pirates walking around on the decks, and then there's a spiral walkway that goes up to the top area. Well, Gerald tries to make a disguise with what he's got, and it doesn't work out too well. The gang is looking at him, and they're saying, you don't quite look like a pirate. So he sneaks off between the crates that are there, and as a pirate goes to walk by him, he shanghais him, bam, grabs him, pulls him into the shadows, and he did some great rolls there and knocked the guy out unconscious. And so he takes the guy's clothes and he ties the guy up, and he ties a rock to him and pushes him into the water. Okay, he's a pirate. So anyway, he comes back, and now the gang's like, well, now you look like a pirate. So he walks up, and he finds Mirf. He walks up to the top, and he comes out on top of the cliff. He finds the prison, and he finds Mirf. And he tells the guard there, Captain Harpoon has asked me to bring this prisoner down to the barge to make ready to sail tomorrow. We're taking him to ransom him. And the guard says, okay. He fails his bluff check. And Gerald makes his bluff, and he gets the prisoner. So he walks him back down. He's walking through all these guys, and they're just respecting him as another pirate. And he gets down to the ship, and he's stopped at the ship. And the 4 guys at the ship say, what are you doing with this prisoner? He says, I need to take him to the boat. And they're like, what? We're in charge of the ship down here. We haven't been told that we were prepared to sail. And he said, I'm also supposed to tell you that we are under attack upstairs. There is a group that was trying to get onto the island earlier, and we're under attack, and they need you upstairs. So he makes that, and the whole ship grabs their weapons and goes running up the hill. So now the ship's left abandoned, and Abaddon grabs a boat, a dinghy, from off of the Salty Chum, and they carry it down the hall. They put it in the water, and they sneak off to their boat. Get on their boat, untie Mirf. Orisa introduces herself as Mirf's mom. Mirf gives her kind of a dumb look for a minute. He's like, oh, and he gives her a hug. That's where our adventure ended. We'll have more next week. Thank you for joining me.